I'm here for that video that everyone is doing at that time of year, and it is my favorite, my single most favorite kind of booktube video to watch, and my single most favorite video to film, and that is my favorite books of the year. Now, I do have several videos coming out. The first is my favorites. Now, favorites, I'm going to say, are books that I felt like had lots of merit from their writing or character development or the world that they were in, and books that will stick with me and will stay with me for a long time. But I also do want to do a favorites with my mysteries. I read 45 mysteries this year. That's a lot of mysteries and a lot more than like most people in BookTube read. So I'm going to do a favorite mysteries video, and I'm not doing it because mysteries are lesser literature, because I hear from a fair number of people on BookTube saying that, you know, like, well, I just haven't been impressed with the writing in mysteries. And the people that I hear that from are people who don't read lots of mysteries. So if you want to hear from people who will tell you about really excellent quality mysteries, go to Louise at the Big Haired Bookworm, Leanne at Literary Diversions. They read lots of mysteries, and they can tell you that it actually, you can find mysteries that have excellent writing. And in the words of Dorothy Sayers, in detective stories, virtue is always triumphant. They're the purest literature we have. So much like fantasy, I think that there really is this kind of like something is shaken up in the world and then it's fixed, and it's really beautiful. So that is just my little soapbox on the merits of mysteries. And I think also many people are kind of think that fantasy doesn't have good writing, but if you watch channels where they read lots of fantasy, they can direct you to fantasy that actually has good writing. So please do not give up on mysteries if you haven't yet, and please watch my top mysteries of the year if you want to know like really solidly well written mysteries that have literary merit to them. On to the fun part of the video though, and I have ended up with 15 books, and these are not in any particular order except for my number one book of the year. And the first one is My Father's Glory and My Mother's Castle. This is written by Marcel Pagnol, and it is a memoir of the time during his childhood where they had a little villa rented in Provence in the countryside. And this is just a book filled with beautiful, lush writing and just kind of him idealizing his childhood almost, but in a really beautiful, elegant way. And also since it is a French book, there's much about food and just treasuring food and really relishing it. And I love this scene where it's just talking about the, 7-fish Christmas Eve dinner and just the detail that he goes into, but also his ways of describing kind of how he becomes connected to the land and comes to know it so well, and just to be so intimately acquainted with it is really beautiful and special. The next one is Of Human Bondage by W. Somerset Maugham. This is one that I haven't talked with you guys as much, but it is the story of Philip and how he becomes just kind of enraptured with this woman, and how you know that she really is not good for him, and you can tell it's bad news as soon as he meets her, but it's like he cannot help himself. I did this as a buddy read in March with Stephanie from That's What She Read, and this book, it's like as I read it, I couldn't decide whether I was enjoying it, and even after I finished, I couldn't decide whether I enjoyed it. But even now, it's so fresh in my mind and has really stayed with me. So I think it's one where there is this, main character of Philip who has this physical malady also, and that really comes into play. He hasn't decided how he feels about it and how to deal with it and how he views himself with this, and how he views himself as whether he's like even a whole person. And it's just very, very fascinating. So this is definitely, it was a challenge to read this. I think it's around 600 pages, and it's just not very plot heavy, but it's so fascinating, and it's such an examination of human nature. And as I'm talking about it, I'm definitely like getting more excited about it too. So like I said, not fun to read, but it has stayed with me very well. The next book is My Family and Other Animals by Gerald Durrell, and I can't help but smile whenever I think about this book, and it is a crime that I have not gone on to the other two in his Corfu trilogy. Anyhow, in case you have not been watching my channel long and you don't know what this book is about, this is about Gerald Durrell. It's his memoir of his time that his British family left England and lived on the Greek island of Corfu. And it's just filled with beautiful, beautiful, elegant prose, but also really hilarious antics that happen. It's also got really interesting things that happen in the plot. So to me, it's kind of a really nice balance that many modern classics are of plot, characters, and beautiful writing. And I think everybody should really read My Family and Other Animals. And I will be very soon hoping to remedy the fact that I haven't read Birds, Beasts, and Other Relatives and My Family and a Zoo. The next one is Coming Home by Rosamund Pilcher. So I was asked recently what my favorite Rosamund Pilcher is, and I don't know if I can ever say, but I do know that when I was looking at the books that I read this year, the Rosamund Pilcher that stuck out to me the most was Coming Home. And I don't know if it's because of the memories that I have associated with it. Like, I read it in May, and I've decided now that May is one of my favorite months in the year because it's when spring has finally arrived and the days are really getting a lot longer. So I don't know if it's my fondness for that time of year or it's just my fondness for the character of Judith. It really, I think, does stick out to me more than maybe Rosamund Pilcher's other books. But I just think it's really great because of the time that you get to spend with the character of Judith. You watch her grow up and you see her go through all these different things that are big challenges in her life, and I just think it's really special. The next one on my list are the first two in the Kristin Lavransdatter trilogy by Sigrid Undset. Now, I have not yet read The Cross. This is the third in the trilogy, and that is because The Wife destroyed me. It killed my soul, and I just needed some time to decompress. But The Cross is on my winter TBR. These are books, this is a trilogy about the character of Kristin. They take place in Norway, and they're just very, very heavy with beautiful, beautiful Catholic imagery and symbolism. And it's the story of Kristin's spiritual journey in her life. And so in the first one, you see her when she's young and she grows up. And then in the second one, called The Wife, you see her when she's married and all of the crazy crap that goes down in her life and how she has to deal with it and how it, draws her closer to God. So it's very beautiful to see all of these events in her life that draw her, to God. And it's just so poetic and beautiful and symbolic, and I love it. And the dramatic landscape, and there's many dramatic wintry scenes, very atmospheric. But like I said, The Wife destroyed me, so I needed a little bit of time. These were written in the 30s, and they won the Pulitzer Prize when they came out. So definitely worth your time if you are, into just very solidly written, more modern fiction. And I will report back what I think of The Cross. Now, it might not be fair that this is on my favorites since I haven't read the third, but it's my channel, so I do what I want. And the next one is the Elliot Family Trilogy by Elizabeth Gouge. And these, another trilogy that I wanted to read this summer, and I only ended up reading the first two. But I know guys, okay? I know what kind of books that I like, and I know that I'm going to still be obsessed with this trilogy after I finish the third one, which is, the first one is A Bird in the Tree, then the second one is Pilgrim's Inn, and then, it's not coming to me. Anyhow, I know that I will still love this trilogy, so it's just full of things I love. It's set in England, it's set in cozy houses, but it has beautiful writing and it has wonderful character development, and it also has a nice, neat little ending tied up with a bow. And I think those are all things that just make it my favorite, and it's just so emotionally engaging, which is something I really look for in books. The next one should come as no surprise, and that is A Suitable Boy by Vikram Seth. This is his epic tale of India, and India and all its ins and outs, from the upper classes down to the untouchables. It deals with religion, it deals with politics, it deals with birth, death, marriage, men and women, gender roles, and so much more. And it's 1,500 pages long, so I read it through May, June, and July, and it made my summer of 2016, and it's amazing. It's one that it does not feel like 1,500 pages, I assure you, because some chapters he has, the chapters are from 3 to 7 pages long. They're very short chapters, so you really feel like you're making headway. And you really do spend an absorbent amount of time with these 4 main families and feel that you have really gotten to know them. It also deals with a couple big events in culture. There was a Zamindari Act, which had to do with landowners and tariffs and kind of how much rent they were charging to farmers that were living on there. That was a big event in India in the 50s. And then in addition to that, there's lots of tensions between Muslims and Hindus. And then also there was a big stampede that happened in that time. So really crazy, you know, big events happening, and then down to kind of the more mundane, like what they're going to eat that day, and also the overarching plot of Lotta and which boy will she marry. And it was really, really fun to wait with bated breath until the end to see who Lotta was going to marry. And oh, it's just so excellent. And I did this as a buddy read with Hillary, and it was so great that she enjoyed it just as much as I did, and it was so fun. You know, we would get behind, we wouldn't be in sync a lot reading a 1,500 page book, but at the end we were able to come together and just really like point out all the quotes that we loved, and I just loved it. And at the end, of course, I had to make Indian food. It was wonderful. The next one is The Pied Piper by Neville Shute. This is a good old-fashioned adventure tale, and Neville Shute, in case you don't know, is a more modern, classic type author. He's from Australia, and he writes really good, solid adventure stories. They aren't very wordy, they aren't very lyrical, but they're just the art of storytelling, the pacing. He has done so well. And in Pied Piper, there's a man who goes on vacation to France, and it ends up he goes there right when World War II breaks out, and this couple says, please, can you take our daughter back with you to England? And he agrees to, you know, get her back safely. And then he ends up having other children just somehow end up in his stead. And so it's just his trying to get back to England and keep all of these children safe at the same time. And I really was on the edge of my seat as I was reading it. So if you want solidly written adventure stories, Neville Shute is your man. I have 4 Victorian novels for you, and the first is Sylvia's Lovers by Elizabeth Gaskell. Oh, I get just so emotional whenever I think about this book. I read this in the month of October, and it inspired me to make an entire video about all of the quotes in it. And I underlined so freaking much of this book, and I say this all the time, but I just love about Elizabeth Gaskell that so many of her books feel so different from one another. And Sylvia's Lovers is about the main character of Sylvia, and she lives in a shore town in northern England, and the main income source in this town is whaling. And so most of the men are involved with the whaling trade. And there is a love triangle in this, so a man who she's in love with, and we don't know if he loves her back, and then a man who's in love with her, who is just, he's committed. You got to give him that. But this is not a feel-good book, but it's so beautiful. I love it so much. And the examination of Sylvia as a character and kind of the choices that she makes and how she deals with the decisions in her life is just fascinating. And I still think about her, and she still fascinates me, and I still honestly can't decide what I think of her. And the next is Dombey and Son by Charles Dickens, and I am so thrilled that I finally found one to top Great Expectations. I never thought that would happen. Dombey and Son is definitely long, though. It is over 800 pages, but it is worth every single page. It is about the family of Dombey. There is a father, and then he has a son and a daughter, and how he is really idolizing the fact that his son will one day take over his family business. In addition to that, there are of course going to be so many colorful characters as there are in any Dickens, and the plot has many twists and turns, and several that I didn't see coming. And one thing that I thought that made this one fun and stand out from other Dickens is that there's a lot about ships and mariners and just different aspects of, you know, people being sailors, and I really enjoyed that. But you really do get to know Mr. Dombey and especially his daughter Flora, and there are so many lovable I think the most lovable side characters in this one out of the Dickens that I have read so far, and just really such a heartwarming ending with a neat little bow tied on it, and that's how I like my Dickens to end. And the next one is Lorna Doone, and this is by R.D. Blackmore. It's another Victorian classic. It's so fun because it's like Robin Hood type adventure meets the Victorian era writing. It's not set in the Victorian era, but it's like a Victorian adventure story, which I don't think there are many of, and I absolutely love this. There was very little dragging in the plot, and it's just about Lorna, who has been raised by the Doone family, and they are a very wicked family who have been exiled out of their lands, and they're just ruthless, and they will steal, kill, and destroy anything that comes in their path. And there's just a really sweet romance, and I really loved it. I highly enjoyed Lorna Doone, and I really recommend it. Even if you are intimidated by classics, like I said, there was very little lagging in the plot. It is kind of long, but I did the audiobook, so that helped me really to kind of plow through it. And next is Barchester Towers by Anthony Trollope, and this was such a treat because you had met certain characters in The Warden, who then you meet in Barchester Towers again and get to see their characters develop more thoroughly. And it's so funny because on the outset, I think to many people it wouldn't be interesting. It's about church politics in the Victorian era, which interests me anyway. But then it's the way that Trollope writes it. It's the way that he lets the plot unfold, but also the characters are what really make this book. And there's a sweet romance in it, which I'm never going to complain about, and it's just excellent, and I cannot wait to read Dr. Thorne. So I'll definitely be reading all of the Barchester Chronicles. And the penultimate book is Cider with Rosie by Lori Lee. This was the book from December. That is one of my favorites from the year, and it was what I was hoping Lark Rise to Candleford by Flora Thompson would be. And because it's about English country life, definitely later time period because it's in between the wars. And the writing is so beautiful, and it has so many beautiful descriptions of everyday things that happen, and it talks about the seasons, so winter, and beautiful images of them going caroling and making money that way, but then also lots about the food that they eat, lots about the school that they go to, but just written in such a way that it's really engaging and dynamic. I will give one caveat. I think it's the last chapter I really could have done without. It had some really upsetting things in it, and it just didn't, I think, meet with the tone of the rest of the book. So if I ever when I reread it, I will not be reading that last chapter. It just really was off-putting to, end the book that way. But other than that, I did absolutely love it, but I just wanted to give that warning for those of you who take my recommendation and do read it. And then lastly, my very most favorite book of the year goes to As I Lay Dying by William Faulkner. This has started what will be a very long love affair with Mr. Faulkner, and As I Lay Dying, I think part of what made me love this book so much was doing my buddy read with Whitney from All the Shelves and Stephanie from That's What She Read. And it was just amazing to read this book that it just made it look easy to really take these certain events in time and make you feel like you were right there and make you feel like you were watching time pass tangibly right in front of you and watching things happen, and all of the symbolism and the imagery and things that you don't notice at first, but as you get further and further into the book, you're able to see that, and to see also kind of how death is viewed through the lens of these 4 different children, these 4 different characters, and the ways that they view their relationships with their mother and with the other characters in the story. This starts out when the mother is dying, and it's her husband and her children dealing with that fact, and she wants to be buried with her other family in a different part of Mississippi, and so they need to take her to that part of Mississippi so she can be buried with her family. She wants that home, that final home, to her resting place, to be with her family. So there's so much about, what is rest, what is a home, what is a family, how you experience everything around you, how you sense things, and it was amazing. It's one of the most amazing books I will have ever read, and so I definitely plan on reading all of Faulkner eventually, and I have several of his on my TBR for this upcoming year. So those are all of the books that I wanted to talk to you about. Sorry, this video got kind of long, but it is what it is, and I will see you guys for another video very soon.